Kids are our future. Find out how you can get involved in making their future brighter. Coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Myrtle Beach Herald. We're focused on kids voting, Horry County. And we're visiting with the chairperson, Lisa Robinson. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, Greg. Good to see you.
Thanks so much for coming in.
Sure. Glad to be here.
It's amazing to think how kids voting is not only here during election years, but all year long. Y'all are doing stuff during the year to really make sure that the next election's successful and that children are really involved.
That's exactly right. So a lot of people don't realize, Greg, that kids voting goes on all the time, not during an election year. And that's something that we try to educate the community to know that kids voting is not here just on election years. But we're out there all the time. We're out there doing fundraisers and educating our children and making them active in the community all the time.
Right. Y'all had a huge turnout this past year in November of '04. Spectacular turnout for the election. I think in the county y'all just went gangbuster numbers.
15,000 students voted in the presidential election this past year. Now, we also, for the first time, had online voting in our middle and high schools, and that's the wave of the future, and so we decided we were going to be proactive and go ahead and start, and we did a pilot program, and we had a lot of middle school and high schoolers that participated, and we were very pleased with that.
This was amazing. You also had a tremendous turnout of volunteers throughout the county. Y'all have a ton of precincts, and to see the volunteer count was
Horry County is huge in the number of precincts that we have, and we had over 500 volunteers.
Wow.
Kids voting couldn't do it without our volunteers, but I think that if you ask any of those people, they will tell you what a great experience it is, and so many of them are return volunteers just because of that, because it is such a great experience for them, but we couldn't do it without them. But over 500 people helped us
That's tremendous.
on election
Of course, whether it's a presidential election or a normal gubernatorial election, whichever year that is, it's going to be a big turnout. And of course, kids voting obviously has an impact, whether it's city council races in an off year, a non-presidential year, for instance. There's a lot going on those years.
Exactly, and that's people think that kids voting oftentimes only holds their votes during election years, but that isn't true. We do gubernatorial, we do council, so we're involved in a lot more than just presidential, but that is, of course, the big one for us.
Right, big focus.
Yes, big one.
Real quick about yourself, Lisa. Are you originally from the area?
I'm originally from North Carolina, the mountains of North Carolina. Boone, Appalachian State
right, sure.
is where I'm from originally, but I have been here. I feel like I'm pretty much a native. I've been here over 20 years.
Is that right?
Yes.
Golly, what brought you here? Yeah.
My husband was in real estate, believe it or not, and came down actually for 2 weeks to help start a business down here. In 2 weeks, just continued and
into 20 years.
Exactly. We left for about a year and a half, about 8 years ago. Went back to the mountains. But like they say, when you get the sand in your shoes, you just can't stand it. You have to come back. So we came back, lasted a year and a half in the cold in the mountains, but we came back down here.
Yeah, I hear folks from this area who are headed up to the mountains all the time. Is that where y'all vacation?
We do. We go up, but we have family. My husband and I both have families still up in Boone, so we do go up there and visit. And it is a beautiful place to visit, but I don't want to live there again.
Right. Yeah. After 20 years down here, that's a great commitment. And you still have family here in the area?
Well, I have my husband, and I have a 20-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old son that are here. My daughter is a sophomore at the University of South Carolina.
Great.
Go Gamecocks. And we finish up in about a week and a half. They finish up very early up there. They start earlier, so she'll be home here for the summer. And my son is a sophomore at Myrtle Beach High School, and he'll be finishing up here before long too.
Great, that he will. That's right. And of course, did they get active in kids voting? Well, of course, your daughter, while she was here,
right,
with mom so active as the chairperson. Now you've been involved. I think I saw for 6 years.
Yes, I have been, and have been the chairman for several years through 2 big elections now, and that's a big thing. But yes. My children, of course, vote when there's kids' elections, and my daughter volunteered and was a volunteer at one of the precincts when she was here, and so the next election, my son will be helping at a precinct too.
I'm sure he will.
Yes.
Am I correct, Lisa? You've been with Time Warner Cable about, you said, 6 or 7 years?
Exactly. Going on 7 years, I've been with Time Warner Cable. I sure have.
What do you do there?
I'm the marketing and public affairs coordinator at Time Warner. That job is great for me, Greg, because it allows me to do the things in the community that I really love to do as part of my job. So not only am I able to volunteer on a personal level, it allows me to be out in the community on a business level.
Oh, yeah, and of course, Time Warner is so spread out through the community, not only in Horry and Georgetown County, but of course so many of our viewers in the PD in southeastern North Carolina are touched by Time Warner in one way or another, whether it's cable or internet or phone service, the digital phone I've seen all over the place.
Right, we're into all that, and we are, the Florence area administratively is run out of our Myrtle Beach office, so I handle that and do the marketing and all for there, and the programs that Time Warner has are all there, and North Carolina is a separate division.
Right.
We're in the South Carolina division, but Time Warner is very big up in North Carolina also.
Absolutely. So what are the programs? Of course, our big focus is on kids voting, a lot to talk about kids voting. Time Warner has some other very active programs that folks are aware of. I think Time to Read is one of them.
Right, exactly. Time to Read is something that's my baby here in this area, in the Florence area. It's a literacy program that we tutor and mentor. We train the tutors to go into, we work with school-age students, and we provide the reading materials to them. And of course, for us, it's magazines, obviously Time publications.
Right, sure.
We use Time for Kids and People for Teens and Sports Illustrated for Kids. And we've, over the course of time, have realized that a lot of times children are intimidated when you walk in with a book for them to read. They're thinking, oh, I can't read all of this. But if you got a magazine with the bright color pictures and the short little headlines, they're more apt to pull that out and look at it. And it's also, of course, current affairs, and that's very interesting to them. So we have found that their interest is a lot better focused on those kind of publications.
Oh, yeah, and of course, Time Inc. has so many different publications. You will find one that appeals to one of the children, even, you said teen people. There's people in Espanol.
Right, exactly.
So there would be that opportunity for some children that are using English as a second language.
That's exactly.
Be an opportunity to reach through the Time Inc. publications, a multitude of kids.
And Time to Read is for Time Warner employees. We have several employees that are active. They encourage employees to participate. And then we also have a tie with Horry County Schools, and we do tutoring, and we go into the different schools. So it's been a lot of fun. And I personally have worked with the Boys and Girls Club of Horry County, and have gone in and worked with their after-school program and done some tutoring over there. So it's just a great way for me personally. Kids are my passion, and so it's a great way for me to tie in my job with the love of kids and doing things with them.
Oh, yeah. Lisa, I think I saw that Time Warner also has, other than Time to Read, there's also some other big events during the year that folks would think about. What are some of those other things? There's the big van that folks may see around town, which connects with kids quite a bit as well.
Right, the Fantastic Van, and that's getting ready to kick into. It'll be a huge season for Time Warner at a lot of different venues in the area. And the big Fantastic Van, if people haven't seen it, have a lot of the logos from the various networks that we offer. Right. And we have games, and they come out, and we have characters and that type of thing. So summer is huge for that. So we'll be out in the community doing a lot of things with that. We've just finished. We have 2 young ladies from Horry County Schools that are on their way back from New York City. Participated in a program called Bravo, On With the Show. The Bravo channel that's on Time Warner offered a contest, and we had 2 winners from here in Horry County. They got to go to Broadway, actually on a Broadway stage, and rehearsed all day with professionals and actually performed on a Broadway stage. So they're going to be back in the area, so I know they're going to be having a lot to tell. Time Warner does a lot of things like that where we're at the schools. We just finished Drive, Chip, and Putt, which is a golf competition with the Golf Channel that we do. It encourages children, obviously in our market with all the golf courses, to come out and just learn to drive, chip, and putt. And they don't have to have golf clubs. They furnish them, and it's just a fun day of a little competition, and they can go on to the regional and national playoffs.
That's tremendous.
Yeah.
That's tremendous. Diane Devon Stokes was with us a few months ago. And of course, when you think about public affairs and much of what you do, so much of that's an extension through Southern Style, which I believe she said has been on air now, either with Time Warner, with its predecessor Cox, for almost 2 decades.
20 years. She's starting her 21st year now, so she's been on for 20 years.
Tremendous.
Diane must have been about 12 when she started.
That's right. 9, she told us. That's right, yeah.
I think that's
you
right.
Put a couple years on it. You be careful. 20 years of doing Southern Style, of course, an ability to really get out and serve Horry and Georgetown County. Of course, in her predecessor position with WPTD or BTW. She'd had a similar show, PD People, I think,
Right.
up on WPD. And, of course, now this 20 years down here serving Horry and Georgetown County through Cox.
Right. Diane's an icon. I think
Yeah.
everyone knows Diane and in the community, and she's so great. She's involved in so much, from her personal charities to her plays that she's in. Everyone, I think, knows Diane.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Lisa, obviously our big focus is kids voting.
Sure.
One other thing, we think about oftentimes so many folks who get involved in activities, a multitude of boards or community
Right.
groups trying to focus on so many. There are reasons why folks would want to look to support kids voting on an annual basis or look at the myriad fundraisers you all have. There are real financial needs that you all have.
We certainly do. And again, it goes back to that folks just think that we are just active during election years. And at those times, people tend to be more generous, and we certainly appreciate that. But again, we have needs all the time because we have things going on. The curriculum that we have is available. The teachers use it even when it's not election years in government classes, civics classes. So we have to have those things available to them, but there's always a cost involved with printing or what have you. We have an executive director that's a full-time position that stays busy all the time representing kids voting and doing things in the community. So we have a big need for funds, and we certainly welcome anybody. If it's a tax-deductible contribution, we certainly welcome any business or a person that was interested and would like to help us out. We certainly can use it at any point in time.
And of course, those funds can be donated over the year or over a series of the certain months. There's multiple ways that the donations can be made, and as you said, they're all tax deductible.
Exactly. We can certainly work with people in terms of we have a lot of corporate businesses that support us, like you say, on a regular basis every year, and we know that at a certain time of year when it comes budget time, we need to let them know that we are still there, and this is what we're looking for, so that they can budget for it, because that's the way so many businesses do nowadays. They have to budget ahead of time, or they just can't just step up to the plate without it.
Right. Obviously, we had originally planned to have, and I'm so glad you came in to sub in for your executive director. Share with the viewers a little bit about Elizabeth and how active she's been. When you think about her activities with kids voting, that's going on for quite a while.
Elizabeth is kids voting.
Oh, yeah.
She really is. She's kids voting in Horry County. Elizabeth's been with kids voting since its conception with Bernie Dove, who was one of the ones that also started. Elizabeth has been with us for over 10 years now.
Wow.
And has done she's just devoted to the cause, and we certainly couldn't do it without her, and our board realizes that we couldn't do it without her. She is Miss Kids Voting, and we've gone to several national conferences together, and all the people at the national conferences know Elizabeth and respect her and look up to her for guidance, and she's just wonderful. We couldn't do it without her.
You mentioned Bernie Dove, someone great to talk about, the founder or co-founder. I mean, obviously he, and then pulling Elizabeth in quickly. So many folks early on. I believe there was some funding. Bernie was with us back in November, talking about kids voting, talking about the election. Obviously, the Knight Foundation having helped kick things off. So critical to get it going. Doug Wendell and some others who really stepped in early on. But those are not donations you need just one time. You need a sustaining effort there. And, of course, Bernie nor any of the board members can really get out there. You mentioned the board. Let's share with the viewers a little about some of the
We have a great board. We have a lot of people that are in marketing positions at their companies, and that brings a great thing to the table with the contacts that we have. We have Patty Urbanowitz with BTW. We have Barry Brown with Next Media. We have Matt Sedota. These names are just huge in the community for all the other things that they do. But these folks bring a lot to the table with their contacts that they have and their devotion and dedication. So we have the banking industry represented. We have Horry County Schools represented. So we try to go from all over the county. We try to have folks from Conway. We have a Cricket Alcorn with HTC is on the board. She'll be stepping up to be the president next year.
Is that right? Cricket Alcorn's the incoming president?
Yes.
Who can follow in your footsteps there, Lisa?
Cricket can do a great job. She will do a great job. But so we really do have a very active board, and they're very passionate about kids voting and devote a lot of time, and I certainly do appreciate that.
And talking about devoting time, you talked about traveling with Elizabeth to the international meetings, and of course, there were a lot of folks committing a lot of time early on to kick off kids voting. Can you share with the viewers, share with us a little bit about how kids voting got kicked off and what the original idea was? I think was it Arizona or?
Right, Kids Voting National is where it started in Arizona, and it just blossomed from there, and now it's in 30 states.
Is that right? 30. Wow.
30 states across the United States. So in South Carolina, Kids Voting is here, obviously, in Horry County. We're also in Georgetown County,
in Georgetown as well.
Right.
Separate board down there, separate groups, but same mission.
Exactly right. And North Carolina has a very strong Kids Voting there, Ohio, so it's all across the United States and continuing to grow. I know Elizabeth gets calls now and then from other places that are trying to think about starting kids voting and boards and programs, and they call her and contact her about, since she started here, they contact her with asking for guidance to get started for them.
Great, good. I'm sure they have. I think there's been a lot of statistical research that reflects that kids who got active in kids voting, since it's been going on long enough, they've been able to gather some good empirical data, but the kids that got active in kids voting early on, the numbers of their percentages of voting after they turned 18 versus kids who did?
Right. I don't know the exact numbers, but there has been research done, and it is very obvious that children that participated in kids voting and went out and voted as children are much more prone to go out as adults. And that's one of the main goals of kids voting. We are nonpartisan, and we don't care who they vote for,
right.
But we just want them to come to the polls and understand how important it is. And with the election, the past president, not the most recent, but the past, when we were with the situation with the votes, that proved to us just how much every single vote counts, and that one vote can make a difference.
Yeah, that critical voting back in 2002.
Right.
In 2000, forgive me.
Right.
Time has flown recently.
Right.
The Al Gore and George Bush,
right.
George H.W. Bush, of course, that big election. And
right.
then, of course, the electoral votes really come into play, and I'm sure that's a lot of discussion with youth about the Electoral College and how that happens and its significance. So there's a lot. The curriculum is so good. I'm so glad you mentioned there's a member, the Horry County School Systems, on y'all's board,
right.
to help reflect this curriculum flows throughout the entire school system.
She's in the Social Studies Department with Horry County Schools, which is where we need to be to get in those things. But you're right, they go in, and particularly in the government classes, show them about the electoral votes and how it impacts and what difference it can make and that type of thing. So not only do we want children to get out and vote, but we also try to engage the whole family in this process and make them realize that how important democracy itself is and civic involvement. That's what we're also trying to do, is to help children understand how important it is to get involved in your community and in your area, so that they can make an impact as they go older and become adults.
Right. Lisa, this really is a hands-on curriculum, though. I mean, this is the focus. The teachers have provided a lot of, there's a lot of guidance provided. Elizabeth and the other folks, so many of the volunteers step out to help make sure the teachers understand this is a hands-on curriculum.
Exactly. We have special training specifically for the teachers that in most schools have a coordinator at each school for kids voting, and we have, before the big elections, we always have training specifically for them. We go to the teachers and ask them what will be helpful to you to make it work. This past time they told us specific calendars with specific dates would help them, and we work that up for them. Anything that we can do to help them, help the students with it, is what we want to do.
Absolutely. One of the other great benefits here, I'm sure the big byproduct, is getting kids to get their parents more active.
That's exactly.
I wonder if there have been numbers that reflect that parents have gotten more active as their kids have.
I don't know if there's actually specific numbers, but I know we get feedback that tells us that, well, I went to vote today because my son said, Mom, we're going to vote, so I had to take him to vote, and while I was there, of course, I voted too. So I don't know that we have actual statistics, but we know by word of mouth that that is true. That parents come because their children have been told at school that they need to come and vote, and they've learned about it and learned how important it is. And so mom and dad, because school's always out on election day, and so in often cases moms and dads are taking their children to daycare or whatever the case may be, and that's so they stop by and vote on their way to daycare or whatever. So it's yes, we are engaging the parents in that also.
I think Bernie and Elizabeth were with us leading right up to the vote. Obviously leading right up to the November vote, and much of what they were talking about, we're going around the schools right now at that time, meeting in big groups, children out in auditoriums, getting together to make sure they understood, A, the significance of voting, B, the significance of kids voting, how they could be active, hearing about some of the internet opportunities. So this is truly an effort. The kids understand the real significance of this. I don't think any one of them have just blown it off. I mean, it's really been a commitment.
Exactly right. And in some cases, and in high school, and that's where we're losing them when it comes to voting, and that's one reason we're trying to kick in with the online voting. We know that high school age students, they know all about the internet and they know how to do all that kind of thing.
Right.
So if they may not drive to the precinct to vote, but if they can sit at their computer and do it, then they're going to go ahead and do it. So that was one of the reasons, was to try to engage high school students, because that's when we lose them. The enthusiasm seems to wane a little bit when they get to be that age. But we have some teachers that provide, say, if you come back with your kids voting button, which we give them their sticker when they vote, that they'll give them 5 points extra credit. Well, if that's what it takes to get them there, and they get into the habit of going, and they realize the significance of going, that's great. That's wonderful. If that's the way we can get them there, we appreciate the teachers doing that.
You know, I think we heard a number of folks talking about, whether it was the volunteers or otherwise, some of the folks who were actually going out to the polls, seeing the kids' voting ballot, which was obviously a little different, but one of the greatest aspects was the ballot questions, whether it was a state question or a county question, and the ease of the writing manipulated without having any of the substance manipulated, but actually just changing a little of the verbiage there to make sure the kids can understand. It was actually much better than the questions that were potentially posed to the citizens themselves.
Right. We had official precinct workers telling us that they had people picking up our ballots. One of the other things, not only is the wording that is easy to understand in layman's terms, we have pictures of the presidential candidates on our ballots. So we had a lot of adults that, while they were waiting in line, would pick up a kid's voting ballot and look at it and be studying it and look at the pictures on the ballot to see. So, it's a wonderful thing for them to pick up and use as a tool. Some of them read it waiting in line before they voted, so they'd be prepared when they got there.
I bet that's a great idea. Why do you think they came up with that idea of putting the pictures of the presidential candidates on there? I just wonder.
I think probably they're thinking of the younger children who may not remember the person's name, but may recognize something from television, a picture from television or in a magazine, and that type of thing. And when they're young, obviously they don't know all the issues, and they may not necessarily be voting for the person as the candidate, but they may say, yes, I remember seeing him on television. I remember him, or mom and dad like him, or something to that effect. So that way they can look at them. But I know, you thought probably with this election that there was 2 or 3 candidates, when actuality there was about 7 presidential candidates, and a lot of people didn't realize that. And with the pictures on the ballots, the children certainly knew and were able to know that.
Of course, there was this aspect. I think there was a recent trip. Was there a club trip to D.C. recently? There was a tie-in that had something with kids voting?
Exactly. We had a kids voting club that went to Washington, D.C., and they got to tour Washington, and so it just carried right over from what they were doing in their classroom and what they were doing with the voting, and seeing it actually in action when they got to go to Washington.
Great. Yeah, I wonder who all went up on that trip. Was it a pretty big group? Or did some of the volunteers from Kids Voting go?
Actually, we didn't. We didn't. We wanted. Some of us wanted to go, but they had a full group from their club, so we were very pleased. And that's a very active teacher that's involved there and gets the students, and that's, again, goes back to the curriculum and the dedication of these teachers to show the children what it's about.
Really ties into a hands-on mode. The teachers understand the impact. Children, obviously, recognizing that's those single votes that could potentially change one presidential candidate to becoming a candidate, something other than a candidate actually becoming the president. I mean, a big deal there back in 2000, which helps set the stage. But again, it's those non-election years when folks aren't necessarily thinking about kids voting on a constant basis, which is when you really need to make sure the funds are there.
That's exactly right. And that, again, that's where we have a struggle as board members, is to keep kids voting out there on the forefront. That's what we're trying to do, to let people know that we are out there and we are doing things, and we do continue to do fundraisers in the community to try, and not only, obviously, the big reason is to raise funds, but they also is to keep to get kids voting out there, so people will know that we are there and that we are out there. And we face that when we go to businesses or organizations and ask for contributions, and they said, well, I didn't know you did anything except election years.
Right.
So we need to do our job better so that they understand that what we are doing when it's not an election.
That is critical. And Lisa, you said obviously kids are so much your focus. I mean, you've wrapped a heck of a lot of folks around, and we haven't been able to talk about the Time to Read program as much, or First Books was another component you've been spent a lot of time on, but obviously the kids' focus on kids voting has been tremendous for you.
Right, it has been, and it's something that I'm very proud of to be involved in. And when I rotate off, I will still be an active member and still be right there for whatever we need.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Greg.
Absolutely. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Lisa Robinson coming up next. Lisa said it off camera, we got to get these zeros in there. It's critical. Think about it. You can pull the checkbook out, kids voting Horry County. Add the zeros. There's a couple of zeros in this phone number. You got to remember them. 843-839-7006. 843-839-7006. There's a lot of other zeros we can talk about. We can talk about the 15,000 kids who turned out either in the polls or online to vote this year. November 2004 was a huge vote. There's another big vote coming up this year, another big vote next year. There's big votes all the time. Couple more zeros. 500 volunteers, more than 500 volunteers in this single county alone, getting out to help make a difference for kids. Voting, it was a big deal in 2000. It was the difference between Gore or Bush. It turned out to be Bush. Next time it can be someone else. You need to take the time. Go online, kidsvotingusa.org, but call that number. Think about adding a zero in there. If it's $10, make it 100. If it's 100, make it 1,000. Or if it's $50, make it 500. 1.5 million children voting across the United States. These zeros are important. Give them a call, 839-7006.